About a week ago, we posted a video regarding ingestion zones. This, of course, following the incident in Montgomery, Alabama, where an employee for Envoy was fatally injured after being ingested into the number one engine of an Embraer. I have here the actual NTSB preliminary investigation report. And there are a couple of tidbits of information here that I thought it would be good to share so that this sort of accident might be avoided in the future. Factually, of course, Montgomery, Alabama, December 31st, 2022. So American Eagle Flight ENY 3408 had an inoperative APU. APU was not operating, and that is pretty important to the events that transpired here. The pilots opted to come into the gate with both engines running, just as they often do, and then they were going to shut down the number two engine, which they did. So, as he, in referring to the captain here, was shutting down the number two, which is the right engine, the door cargo forward open engine indicating and crew alerting system, ICAS messages appeared, which indicated that the forward cargo door had been opened. Now, at this point, the number one engine was still running and the beacon was still illuminated, but the front cargo door was now open, even though the number two engine had likely spooled down completely at that point. From the camera views, the marshaller could be seen backing away from the airplane's open forward cargo door. So it was the marshaller that opened that forward cargo door. And the ramp agent from the back of the airplane, this is one of the agents who had wing locked the airplane. She went to go move a cone into the back of the airplane. She reappeared walking along the leading edge of the left wing. That's the very front of the wing, and directly in front of the number one engine. Of course, the number one engine was still running at that point. She was subsequently pulled off her feet and into the operating engine. Throughout the course of the accident, the airplane's upper rotating beacon light appeared to be illuminated, and that's from the camera angle that it said there. So the ground crew had reported that a safety briefing was held about 10 minutes before the airplane arrived at the gate. The second safety huddle was held shortly before the airplane arrived to reiterate that the engines would remain running until ground power was connected. It was also discussed that the airplane should not be approached and the safety cones shouldn't be set until the engines were off, spooled down. The airplane's rotating beacon light had been extinguished by the flight crew. I opened up our operations manual and I discovered several indications as to what the rule book says about approaching airplanes. And this is section 1.02 of line cargo processes. This is right out of the ROM, by the way. A-0, under paragraph C, ground equipment properly positioned for servicing the aircraft. First one on the list, right engine on the first officer's side has to be spooled down, and anti-collision beacon light has been turned off before approaching the aircraft. That beacon light indication appears frequently in our ROM. This one out of the section marked ground equipment. This is section 8.01, paragraph Y. During gate arrival of American Airlines aircraft via taxi, all ground equipment must remain outside the safety envelope, including approach from the aft, until the right engine on the first officer's side has spooled down and anti-collision beacon light has been turned off before approaching the aircraft. Then standard ground handling process should begin. Let's look at it again. This is under arrival duties. This is section 9-03, paragraph 9 on this page. General guidelines, all fleet types, aft cargo door closed until right engine on first officer side has been spooled down and anti-collision beacon light has been turned off. Happens again 2 paragraphs later. During gate arrival of company aircraft via taxi, anti-collision beacon light has been turned off before approaching aircraft. I think I have one more. I do. And this is on page 9.03 rather. After the aircraft has come to a complete stop rather, the only time the employee should be inside the safety clearance lines when the engine has not spooled down and or the anti-collision beacon light has not been turned off is to chock the nose landing gear tire and add ground power to the aircraft. So what I read out of the ROM is that we shouldn't be approaching that airplane at all until that beacon is off. And that's not a new rule. That's been in place for a long time. And I know that there's some folks out there that have argued with me on that point because it was once a practice where as long as that number 2 engine was spooled down, regardless of the beacon, you could open the cargo doors. That hasn't been the case for quite some time. I'd have to double check on the revisions, but this is the current revision of the ROM. So this is very specific to our job today. The employee in Montgomery either didn't listen to the huddle or the huddle didn't actually happen. Who am I to question what's in the NTSB report? But what I do know is that it is quite possibly the most horrible accident one could imagine, and it was completely 100% preventable. I have seen in recent times that there are people that ignore the beacon altogether and will race toward a cargo door regardless of the beacon, and in some cases regardless of whether that number 1 engine is running or not. Let's use that beacon to our advantage. The airline's not going to go bankrupt because we take an extra 10 seconds to open a door, and there ain't nobody giving out awards for the first one to get to the cargo door, whether that beacon's running or not. So let's wait until that beacon gets extinguished before we approach airplanes, and hopefully this sort of accident will never ever happen again. Certainly not in Phoenix, but hopefully not anywhere.